Hi, I'm George from Racing Clips and Picks, and welcome to another episode of the Outlap. There's a lot going on this week with chaos happening everywhere. There's team orders and contact in Hungary, just chaos in Toronto, and a very controversial ending in Indianapolis. Now let's get started and talk about some F1. It was a very chaotic weekend. First, there's team orders and Max Verstappen on a reign of terror in Hungary. There's just chaos with contact everywhere in Toronto, and a very controversial ending in Indianapolis for NASCAR. Now let's get started and talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix. At the beginning, it seemed like it was going to be just a typical Hungarian GP with no passing, and it had to be a strategy race. It was pretty obvious from the beginning that it was going to be a 2 to 3 stop race. It just depends on what tires you go on and when. Um, you know, Max Verstappen, he had an audacious attempt to go around both McLarens at turn one. He went off the road, and a couple hours later had to give back to Lando Norris. In my opinion, I would have just kept it because it's turn one, lap one. Of course, people are going to try anything to get as far ahead as they can, and the FIA has shown in the past that if something happens in the first couple corners, they just let it go. So I don't know why, Red Bull made him go back and, give back the position. I think that's kind of what changed the race for everyone, involved. Who knows what would have happened if Max stayed P2. Oscar had a brilliant start, taking advantage of the inside line. Norris tried to squeeze him. He didn't, Oscar didn't give up. He fought back and took P1 and led for an eternity until the end. We'll talk about that later, of course. But, in the middle of the race was just very typical Hungary, just strategy, work your way up, build close that gap and take advantage of the DRS on the main straight. Some comers and goers, George Russell and Checo were just coming up the field. Checo, seemed, doing what he's supposed to in the Red Bull. George was very quiet in the race, just kind of just picking off guys when they could, taking advantage when others were pitting because they were both on the hard tires, I believe, to start off the race. Then, we came, Max Verstappen was closing on Norris. Then Hamilton started closing on Verstappen. And I don't know what happened. This race kind of sums up Red Bull's season, I would say. People saying Max was just losing his mind and he's not good at wheel to wheel. In my honest opinion, it just feels like Max is like, I'm by myself. I'm trying to make something out of nothing because he has no help. It's pretty much Max against two Ferraris, two McLarens, and two Mercedes. It just shows why Red Bull have to make a change. Honestly, after Spa, they have to get rid of Checo. I'm sorry. I don't know who would you put in there because Lawson, you just don't want to throw him in there. Yuki, you have no idea how he's going to match with Verstappen with his personality and temperament. Ricardo seems like, I guess, the safe bet, but still, like, he doesn't have that pace that I've seen like his last stint at Red Bull. But it feels like that they're stuck. They just feel in a stuck position. For 2025, do they just say, screw it, let's try to get Carlos, or do they call up Daniel or Yuki? It's a tough decision for Red Bull because you want to find someone just as fast as Max Verstappen, even though there's only 3 guys in the whole series that I believe had the same pace as him, and also isn't going to cause trouble with him. The reason why Max loves having Checo around is because Checo isn't going to challenge him, but still is going to be close to him. That was the original, reason for signing Checo, was have someone that can, be a couple tenths off Max, but still be in the running just in case something happens and be a rear gunner, but not be fast enough where they're making contact like Weber and Vettel were. So it's a tough decision for Christian Horner on what he's going to do. They had a big upgrade coming this weekend, and it didn't do much. It honestly didn't do anything for them. So Red Bull is in a very they're in a very tough spot right now. It's kind of like an identity crisis for them. They have no idea who they are. So after that, Verstappen did show pace in the hards. Hamilton was giving him trouble. The Ferraris were kind of lurking. They would get there, then they had to pit and fall back a little, but they were showing like, hey, we're still up here. But these Aussies weren't doing much in the race. Then near the end of the race, there was final pit stops. For some reason, even though Oscar was leading the whole race, they pit Lando Norris first and take a lap or two to pit Piastri. This gives Lando a lead, and he extends it to like 6, 7, 8 seconds. And people are like, is he gonna give it back, or did McLaren just screw over Oscar Piastri for no reason? Then for like 15 laps, Lando was just getting constant team radios, get the position back, slow down. Hey, don't blow up your tires. Like, slow down a bit. Cool the tires off. And he wasn't listening. He said in his interview, "Oh, I was gonna be back the last lap," but you can tell he was not listening. He even said, had a couple snappy responses back to his team. He was like, "Well, tell him to catch up." Then I mean, in all honesty, I would not have given the position back. Like, it's not Lando's fault. The team did some really weird strategy thing. Not even strategy, just a weird pit call. You guys are dominating the race. You had like a 14-second lead because Max and Lewis were just fighting each other. There's no trouble at back. No one was really having issues on track. The only retirement was Pierre Gasly. He pitted. So that was a really weird call. I see why McLaren was so desperate to have him give the position back, but I'm sorry. I feel like, do you really want to win like that? Am I like, do you really want to win like that? I understand you got screwed by your team, but it kind of looks not bad, but just kind of like to an outsider, like, so F1, the fastest guy doesn't win. They don't even fight for the position. Like, I guess coming from the American racing background, where in IndyCar, NASCAR, people are risking death just for 25th position. To just have a guy who's leading the race slow down 5 seconds in one corner just to let his teammate by so he can win. And honestly, I think I kind of hope, even though it's not popular, but I kind of hope that the FIA, FOM, someone just says no more team orders, because it looked like a disgrace on TV. But yeah, that's that. Pretty good podium for Lewis Hamilton, number 200. Mercedes are back, I would say. These past 4 races have just been a resurgence for Mercedes. People have been so focused on McLaren, but Mercedes has made the equal jump that people are like, oh, maybe Hamilton made a bad decision. But still, you have to realize 2026 is the big number. Yeah, you may have performers going to 2025, but in 2026 it might be a complete reset. Overall, great race. Not a great race. I would give it a man race. Good race. Decent race. I don't know how would you describe it. But I would give it a 4 or 5 out of 10. Just very hard to pass. You can't really. It's not really. Is it the track's fault, the car's fault? You can argue that all day, but not much going on. Really, just people being patient, trying to control the tires and get into a good position to pass into turn 1. Now let's go on to IndyCar. We're in Toronto this weekend. Colton Herta, I'm just gonna say it straight up, Colton Herta dominated. He led 81 of the 85 laps. And with it being a street course, people are expecting a lot of cautions. Surprisingly, it was low for a street course. Only 5 cautions, 15 laps under caution, so not bad. Pretty good for a street course. Pretty chaotic weekend from the start. McLaren's Alexander Rossi broke his thumb in practice, so they had to call in their recently fired driver, Teo Percher, who was just chilling in France, enjoying his unemployed life for a couple months. He gets a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think they said in the broadcast, but He had to fly at 3 o'clock in the morning from France to Germany, and then Germany all the way to Toronto. I don't know how he got any sleep because they had to prep him. I think they were sending him on boards of the track so he can learn the track on the airplane. His only sessions was qualifying. And surprisingly, he only finished in 14th place with no prep. It just shows you how good this kid is. I don't know. He has to have a seat for next year because there's no way that no one's gonna sign this kid. I understand it depends on money and all that, but I think he's just proving with each circumstance of him filling in or just doing these audacious substitute appearances that he needs a seat. But yeah, like I said before, Colton Herta dominated. It was an Andretti 1-2. Kyle Kirkwood in P2. Great job from him. Kind of looking at the order, just typical runners. David Malukas, A1 signing for Meyer Shake. They needed a driver to bring them up in the points so they can get that TV money, and David Malukas is doing the perfect job for that. Rinus VK in 8th place. He's showing that he can still run with the big boys. Maybe he gets his shot soon with one of the big teams. Looking kind of down the order. Oh, P15. Shout out to Toby, one of my followers, actually. He's a really cool guy. I DM him every once in a while. I know he's just busy, but, great job for him. His second ever IndyCar race and proving that he's not a backmarker. Some people are saying, oh, he's a money pay driver, and I don't know. He's proven that he could, run top 15 in his second ever race. That's impressive. But yeah, pretty average IndyCar race. I couldn't catch most of it because I was out and the whole presidential thing was going on. So, was watching. I don't know why I watched. I'm getting old. But yeah, overall, pretty average street race for IndyCar. There's chaos at the end, of course. So Ferrucci flipped. They used Pato War as a ramp and like 2 cars flipped. That was insane. Just typical. It's your average IndyCar crash on a street course because it just feels like whenever they get off a road course or an oval, they just forget how to drive almost. Me personally, I'm not a fan of all the street courses. I think they can do better with the calendar. Actually might make a video on it soon, maybe, but I hope you know Penske, I think Jay Fry, whoever's in charge of the series, like that day to day, would actually listen to the drivers and fans, like, hey, we need to spread out the calendar, add another race or two, add some ovals, and just spread out the calendar. Cough, cough. Come back to Pocono. But yeah, overall, this IndyCar season has been, par for course. Not a lot of surprises. This hybrid, the hybrid change has been. I haven't noticed a big difference with the hybrids, really, in my opinion. They're still racing the same. So maybe when they get the new chassis, that it'll make more of a difference. But overall, pretty good race. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Just average par for the course for IndyCar. No news lately. Just kind of the tail for chair stuff with McLaren. He did an interview with a French company. I think Auto Hedbo, or I forgot. I don't know what company it was. It was pretty damning. Like, it was a bombshell, just like him calling out management, Tony Kanaan. Then, like a day before he has to sub in, like a day or two before, he kind of recanted, saying, "Oh, they took my words out of context." Blah blah blah. I still think there's some truth to it because the way he was fired was just out of nowhere. So maybe down the road we'll get a book from him and we'll get the real story of what happened. But good for him showing his skills. Pato Ward, again being a ramp. I feel bad for him with this whole McLaren situation because it just feels like no one's taking control. So maybe they'll work things out soon. Alex Palou, I'm kind of going on the finishers right now. Alex Palou, he just always finds a way. No matter what happens in the race, if it's boring, if it's chaotic, he always finds a way to be in the top 5. And I think this is reason why it may be controversial for me to say this, but he's easily top 5 driver in the world right now. Take WEC, F1, NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, any racing series, and he's top five in the world right now. If he was younger, he would have had an F1 seat by now with these performances. But he's happy in IndyCar, actually having a chance to win championships year in year out. But yeah, over Alex Palou, I don't know I don't know how to describe him. He's top five in the world for a reason. Next up, we're gonna talk about NASCAR in Indianapolis, but we'll be right back after this message. Are you looking to elevate your wardrobe? Check out Furious Motorsport today. They specialize in baseball and hockey jerseys inspired by the sleek, high-performance style of Formula One. Whether you're going to a ball game, watching the race at home, or just going to the bar at night, their jerseys combine the thrill and the fandom of Formula One in a sleek, modern design. And here's the best part. Use our code RACINGCLIP43712 at checkout and you get 10% off your order. That's RACINGCLIP43712 and you get 10% off. Now that's amazing. Gear up with Furious Motorsport and take your fandom to the next level. Visit FuriousMotorsport.com and don't forget, use our code for 10% off at checkout. Make sure you race into style. Now let's get into NASCAR, the final race of the weekend, part of the big three, I guess people will consider. This weekend was very interesting. It was the return to the oval. Many fans and drivers were praying that they would return to the oval after some lackluster road course races there. And some people are gonna say they didn't like the racing, but they have to realize, like, with these big ovals, it's just like Pocono. It's how do you strategize, how do you save fuel and track position. It's just another Pocono. So some fans may not have liked it. They probably thought it was boring. I thought it was interesting. I do wish the last couple laps stayed caution free. Kyle Larson, the winner today. I'll just kind of get that out quick. Yeah, Kyle Larson. He went from P23 to P3 in 20 laps. On the restart beforehand, and he was gonna pass Brad and Ryan anyways. I think he just had so much speed. Um, just coming off that pit stop. I do wish that it stayed caution free, but we did get a bunch of cautions. Cautions breeding cautions, even a massive one at the end that caused a red flag. Um, overall, it was a pretty good race. Um, Still tough to pass. Indy is one groove, so you do have to kind of take that into effect. You're not going to get side by side every time. It kind of just depends on who gets to the corner first, who gets to the bottom groove first, and who kind of takes advantage. Just looking at Kyle Larson, just every lap on that final stint, he would get to someone on the straightaway. He would get to their left rear quarter, and he got the position. He was just moving. Overall, just pretty just a fuel efficient, fuel saving race. Some of the heavy hitters did get out early. My kind of pick for the race, William Byron, got caught up. With Indy being so narrow, it's kind of just like a constant traffic jam. It's just like get what you can because there's no place to go. Martin Truex Jr. kind of was a victim of it. On one of the restarts, I think, one of the restarts, everyone was jockeying position. They were too wide going into, I think, turn 3 it was, turn 3 or turn 2, I'm not sure. And he made contact with Larson. It seems like Ross Chastain was kind of crowding him. Ross Chastain lifted because he knew 3 wide was not going to work in the corner. Larson and Truex made contact, and Truex gets sent into the wall. Just unfortunate for him. I know he's just trying to enjoy his last season. Kyle Busch was running up front, kind of was true strategy. Him and LaJoy, kind of funny enough, were behind each other, and then it just went downhill for Kyle Busch. Just another bad weekend for him. I feel really bad. Hopefully RCR can change things around. I don't know what's needed there. Controversially, you could say Richard Childress needs to just maybe let someone else take the reins. But who at this point, I don't know who in that organization is good enough to take reins of the whole operation. So be interesting to see what happens there. I know they're kind of hinting at some big signings on the technical side. So let's see what happens there. Um, Now let's get to the end of the race. The end of the race, kind of just looking at social media, was very controversial. Pretty much half the field was going to run out of gas. Um, in the final 2 laps, like everyone was saying that they were 2 laps short. I think Larson said they were only 1 lap to the good, even though he pitted like 20 laps later than everyone. That was weird. So yeah, they're coming off. Well, the first controversy happens coming to the restart before the big red flag incident. The pace car pulls off, and Brad Keselowski follows the pace car. Now there's a quick like moment of like what is going on. So Kyle Larson's like, oh, I guess we just move up a row, which brings him and Ryan Blaney 1-2. Blaney becomes a control car, but they should have waved it off because it was at the last second. Then no one really knew what was going on. I think it was Todd Gillen was pushing Larson, so it looked like Larson jumped the start, but NASCAR league reviewed it said he didn't. Blaney was not happy. He really thought that Larson jumped it, and something should the NASCAR should have weighed the caution off so he could take the bottom. Just unfortunate, unlucky there. Then we have a massive incident. They move a wall. The red flag comes out. Blaney's still on the radio, like, yo, like, what's going on here? Then we come to the final overtime restart where they make it through turn 1, but then Ryan Preece gets caught up and, spins out, hits something. Now the camera's on him for a good, the whole time, and they still don't call, they don't call the caution until Larson gets to the white. They go 75% of the way of the track, touch the yellow, then boom, caution comes out immediately. Now, people are saying they should have called the caution immediately. That's how they've been doing it. And then it seems like from NASCAR's point of view that they were happy that he tried his best. He made an effort to get the car rolling. But he got stuck because he had a flat tire. But he did get the car pointing in the right way. So in NASCAR's eyes, he did what he could, and they thought there was no danger. The way I view it, as if it was any other point of the race, they would have called the caution immediately. But with what was going on, this is a very unfavorable take and a very hot take, whatever you want to call it. But I think NASCAR made a good decision there. Rather than have another overtime and half the field run out, had to go pit for gas, and then have another pile up, NASCAR was like, just race to the white, kind of like the old school days of racing back to the yellow, pretty much. I don't know what else you can do there. I think if it was a different track where fuel wasn't an issue, they would have kept running it back. But with Indy being such a huge track and fuel being an issue, they were like, it would be unfair to some of the drivers. If they're running P10, they have to pit. They finish P30. Because NASCAR wants to try another overtime. I think if NASCAR did call it, then the other side would be unhappy, and the side that's mad now would be happy. Like, you can't make everyone happy in these decisions. So, it's just how things go. NASCAR, they do their best. I don't think they do this purposely. I know people are like, oh, blah blah blah, Hendrick, blah blah blah, but they did the same thing last year at Pocono when Denny Hamlin won. So I don't know what you can say there, or 2 years ago at Pocono. So I don't really know what you can say about bias. They literally did the same thing for a Toyota driver. But yeah, overall, decent race, decent weekend. I'll give the Indy race a 5 out of 10. If it stayed green, then it would have been a 6.5 in my opinion. Just seeing Larson come back like that. Um, Honorable mention race of the weekend for me was the Xfinity race. Even though they couldn't pass, they could still get to each other and try to make moves. And the ending was just amazing. You could feel it, like they're coming across to the white flag 3 wide. Like it felt amazing. So I would give that race like an 8 out of 10. Even though the first half was not that interesting. But yeah, overall great racing on the weekend. We'll get into our 3 stars now. Our first star gotta be Kyle Larson. Coming from P23 in the final, not the final restart, but the last stint, and to come from P23 to P3 in a car in a package where you can't pass, you get a star for the. Plus, you won the race, so yeah, you get a star for that. Next up, our second star, Lewis Hamilton, 200th podium, stayed calm, cool, collected, took what he can. Who knows? Maybe that fight with Verstappen didn't happen, or if things went differently, he could have gotten P2. You never know. But yeah, a really strong couple weekends for Lewis Hamilton. I would give him, yeah, he's my second star for that. And then our third star, I would have to say Riley Herbst. I know he gets so much stick from online because he's he's a rich kid, blah blah blah, pay driver, blah blah blah, But people say, oh, it's 2 wins, but this Indy win just took him to. It feel like it's took him to another level. Like he showed maturity. He didn't lose his mind. He almost crashed on turn 4, fighting for the win, and saved it. And I don't know. It just feels like he took things to another level this weekend. And when he signs his Cup contract this week, I think we'll look back in this one and be like, okay, he's ready. He's ready for the big show. So yeah, our 3 stars, Kyle Larson, Lewis Hamilton, and Riley Herbst. We'll see you back next week. We do have some videos coming up in the pipeline. Sorry, I've been so busy with work and trying to keep up all the racing. But yeah, we have some stuff coming up. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of the Outlap. Feel free to DM, follow, like, anything. Just any way interact with the show. It really helps out. And thank you all so much. We'll see you next week.